right, everybody, welcome to episode 1 of Mishmash Men, or M Cubed, as the kids have been calling it.
That's what I hear.
It's all the rage right now, M Cubed. Today, you're here with me, co-host Dustin Labar. To my left is Mr. Adam Mauser.
How do you do?
On today's first episode, I'm going to be taking the lead on this. We're going to be talking about something that I consider fun because it was a big part of my early to middle age, like early teens age is WWF or WWE, depending on when you grew up. So we're going to learn a little bit about the history of that. We're going to talk about some of that stuff. And I think it's an interesting topic. I think we talked about it the one time where I saw something about it, and I was like, that's interesting, because I think Vince McMahon was going to sell it.
Yeah, that's what it was, Vince McMahon.
It. So,
yeah. It is interesting because it's a business.
Yes.
But then there's the entertainment part of it.
Correct. So what's crazy to me as doing all this research was that there were some things that I had absolutely no idea about. And, you know, from the business side of it and also what was happening, like as a kid watching it, you don't realize that there's like a business side of this stuff. So you're watching it like very like oblivious to what's going on.
Right.
But very, very interesting stuff business wise and what people did to make this what it is today. So let's kick it off. Do you know the original name of what we now know as a WWE, the very first name?
Before, so I'm going to assume it's not WWF.
Before WWF.
Okay.
Before WWF.
No.
So it was founded in 1953, which was way older than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
I had no idea when professional wrestling really like took off. Like in my head, it was the 80s was like when it really kicked off, but it's been going on for 30 years before that. So it was founded as Capital Wrestling Corporation, or the CWC. The CWC. So it obviously went through several name changes. It was the CWC, then it was the WWWF, then the WWF, and now the commonly referred to WWE. Yeah. So those are the name change. In 2002, it moved fully to WWE and was solely branded as that in 2011. So let's go through some of the important years of what's going on with this. So
a question for you.
Sure, go ahead. So
the before it was the Capital, I can't remember the name, the CWC, there was obviously stage, I forget what they called it, shoot wrestling. What else they call it?
I'm not sure of the shoot wrestling. Well, so they had to so this started. So here's a very interesting thing, and I can get into this now. So wrestling was very regional.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that because you always just assume that everybody could watch it always. But it was like very regional. So like this one promotion only did the Northeast, and this one promotion only did this.
Oh, they had like an informal agreement maybe.
And pretty much they wouldn't like cross, except they had an organization called the NWA, and that champion could go to different promotions and defend his belt.
And that was probably a good draw for the crowds.
So,
like, hey, so-and-so, George the Animal Steel or whoever.
Correct. Yeah. So I didn't even realize that because when I was watching it as a kid, it was, you know, worldwide. Everybody was watching it. So it was very, very regional, which is really important to the history of it. And then another about the NWA, they actually made the champion put a $25,000 deposit down on the belt so that they wouldn't leave the NWA. Or the National Wrestling Association. Wow. So he would like travel, and so the guys didn't want to give the belt up because they would lose their $25,000 deposit. So, but the first show of the CWC was January 7th, 1953. And do you know who this is the original Capital Wrestling Corporation, the CWC, was founded by?
All right, I'm going to guess.
Okay.
I think it was Jim McMahon's dad.
Vince McMahon's.
Or yeah, Vince McMahon. Yeah, Jim McMahon is the quarterback from the 86 Bears. I was close.
Great guy.
I was real close.
That's a great guy. Yeah. He does a good dance. I'll tell you that.
Fantastic.
Right now.
It's more of a shuffle.
It is a shuffle. But hey, they were cool. The one time the Bears were cool. So there's apparently some dispute about this that I'm guessing only real big wrestling heads know. So people say Vincent J. McMahon founded the CWC, which is now the WWF, which is Vince McMahon's father. Mm-hmm. But there's some argument that Jess McMahon would be Vince McMahon now's grandfather, started it. So there's like some dispute on who started that.
Okay.
It's been obviously been in their family. I don't know why you'd make that dispute as the family. Like you're like, no,
like McMahon's.
My dad started it, not my grandfather. Like I don't know why that would be. Also, I'm gonna powerbomb him if they say it again. Like one of those things. I don't know why I don't know why it became such a big deal, but that was like one of the things that I saw was like Jess McMahon, his father was the start, but they don't really know. Apparently they can't figure it out. So I was just talking about the NWA. So it was like this all-encompassing organization. So they had these regional circuits, and then the NWA, the champion, could kind of float around and go compete wherever. Mm-hmm. But the CWC left the NWA in protest with other promotions to create the WWF, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Okay. So they left. They were like, we don't like what you're doing. Yeah. You're keeping us down. We want to do all this other stuff. Hey, we're going to leave. So they formed that on January 24th of 1963. So that's when they moved from the CWC, which was just the McMahon entity, into this WWF, which is more encompassing, but still mostly only regional. So they started their own thing, but they were still not like, they weren't like this big entity that could cover the whole world or United States.
Yeah. So they weren't very well named.
No, exactly. Yes. So, I mean, it's like,
they had aspirations.
It's a pretty, they were like, we're going to go with the world on this one. You don't even want to go to the United States, or like the world. So
kind of like the World Series.
Exactly.
Yeah, not really, but we're going to call it the World
American Series. It's like, or the Super Bowl. It's like, I mean, there's only one country playing this game.
Right.
I mean, Canada, I guess they're kind of playing it, but
sorry.
Sorry about that hit. Sorry. So they formed in the beginning of 1963, and they started gaining notoriety in the 70s because they were hosting pretty big shows at like Madison Square Garden and Shea Stadium. So that's Madison Square Garden's the Northeast. They kind of had that little tie there. So some interesting facts about this time period is baby faces. Are you familiar with the term baby face?
Somewhat, but I don't know in relation to wrestling.
So babyface basically is a good guy in wrestling.
Oh, okay.
So baby faces are the guy, like,
not a heel.
Correct. The heel is the bad guy. So basically, they would create these baby faces, and they could be champion for as long as they wanted, or as long as the company wanted to. They would only let heels or bad guys be the champion for no longer than a month, and they were only used to transition to the new babyface champion.
That's interesting.
So essentially, they'd have like a good guy, he'd lose to whoever, and then that guy would hold the belt for maybe 1 or 2 matches, and then they would transfer over. It was obviously like more of a, you'll see here in a little bit, it kind of transformed a couple times, like the overall, but like they want to keep, the fans happy. The bad guys are bad guys. We don't want to cheer them. We want them to lose, and only the heels are going to have the belt, pretty much is the way it was.
So that's interesting because now, I mean, it's been a while since I followed wrestling.
Sure.
Since I was probably that age you're talking about, 13, teenage years.
Sure.
And I think they even got more like this, where it's like this story arc. You have this whole bad group.
Correct.
And there's a hierarchy on the bad guy side, and there's kind of like the Super Friends or the Marvel universe. There's these bad guys, and there's the good guys.
Right.
And there's a story arc that follows along.
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, I think they've had like a general theme throughout of that, as wrestling went on, they expanded upon that. So like they would really promote the heels because good or bad publicity, they were happy about that. So if the crowd was booing them, that's good.
Right.
They
draws fans.
Yeah, of course. So they kind of kept expanding on that. So the WWF, one of their big claims to fame, or how they started getting more popular, is they would feature out-of-territory wrestlers. So they would call guys and be like, hey, I know you're from the Pacific West, but you want to come wrestle in this promotion for, one match, or you'll be a champion. So like some of the guys, they got Dusty Rhodes. Yep. You remember the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes? And
kind of sloppy.
Yeah, kind of sloppy. And then they also were able to get, for a few matches, the highest paid wrestler at that time. Do you know who that was? And this would be from the 63 at the very beginning to the 80s, to the beginning of the 80s.
Highest paid so we're talking 70s is a sweet spot. I'm going to guess Andre the Giant.
Yep, that's correct.
All
so
right.
It was Andre the Giant. So they were able to get him, and he was the highest paid wrestler at that time. Obviously, I don't know if you are listening and you haven't seen Andre the Giant, he was literally a giant.
He was huge.
Did you ever hear the story about him? I should have looked this up. Didn't he drink like cases of beer at a time?
I remember seeing like the volume that he would eat and drink.
Yeah,
it was like what I don't think you and I could do it.
No. not to get no. It was like, and the beer can was like nothing in his hand.
Yeah.
So, but he would like drink all this stuff. But he was obviously like the picture of health. He was
Yeah. And he was also in the what's the name of that? The Princess Bride. The Princess Bride.
That's right. He wasn't the Princess.
It's really
Bride.
funny.
A lot of wrestlers make that transition because it's the money.
Yeah, they're performers.
They're performers. They kind of have a following, and then they kind of get into that wrestling.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're moving. So 63 to 80, we're talking, the original starter of the WWF, and then we're kind of getting into some bigger characters. So from 80 to 82, Vincent K. McMahon, that's Vincent J. McMahon's son, started Titan Sports, and then that's when he officially applied for the trademark, the WWF.
Okay.
So that 80 to 82 range is when he officially was like, hey, we could probably do something with this.
And this is about, because I was